What are your remembrances of Eric Berry and your thoughts? I covered him um, throughout that time, and I want to share some thoughts. But Caleb, what are your remembrances of Eric Berry? What stands out? And message board guys, go ahead and already Joe stole my thunder. All right, Joe. All right, go ahead. Don't mention that, Caleb. Don't mention what I'm about to do.
Okay. So my memories of Eric Berry more than anything was it was so hard to figure. There wasn't a skill position that he could not have played. Um, and you almost wondered, was he wasted at strong safety? Because if they wanted to line him up at receiver or kick returner or punt returner or Monty Kiffin effectively lined him up at linebacker because remember Monty Kiffin's Tampa 2 call for smaller players to usually play linebacker. So Eric Berry, I think that's why he didn't actually break the all-time interception return yardage record, is because Monty Kiffin didn't have him in coverage as much that last year.
True.
And so the one play that stands out, there's a play against South Carolina. It was because I think for all of us, what we remember the most is how great he was at returning turnovers, whether it be a fumble recovery or an interception. And there was a play his freshman year against South Carolina. South Carolina's opening drive, they fumble. Eric Berry picks it up and he's returning. And he throws a blocker in front of him. He throws a teammate. I forget who he threw in front of him, but he throws a teammate in front of him to block for him so he can get down the sideline. And he almost scores.
I want to get to my memories of Eric Berry, and they probably weren't really pleasant for him. But first, we'll give this a shot and see how this works.
Yeah, what up, football fans? Yeah, I call you
Remember this?
football because we the volunteers.
Yeah, I remember it. I loved the original. Ronaldo Woolridge was a terrible rapper. There's a reason Swiper Boy never made it.
Oh,
We know it's football time.
well, no, this is Ronaldo Woolridge.
I know.
Who
I
did
know.
the original?
Oh, there's the song is a remake of a song by a rapper named Hurricane Chris called Halle Berry. Halle Berry.
Oh.
Halle Berry. And that's what they were remaking when they did this song.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Yeah.
very hip at the time.
Hurricane Chris has, by the way, since not Ronaldo Woolridge, Hurricane Chris, the original rapper, has since been charged with second-degree murder. Kind of had his own issues.
Well,
But
it didn't happen to Ronaldo nor Eric.
yes, exactly, it didn't. But he had another song called "Hey Baby, Let It Play." That's my song. Turn it up. Hey baby, that was Hurricane Chris. And so Louisiana rapper. Those are my peak years. But I remember the Swiper Boy version.
I remember getting in an argument with a Tennessee beat reporter at the time. I said, if Ronaldo Woolridge wasn't as obsessed with rapping, he may be a better basketball player. And I still stand by that. The guy transferred to USC, if you remember, Southern California, and then played in Spain for about a year. I thought he had talent. I thought he could be a good swing man. He needed to develop a better jumper. But nevertheless, here are my thoughts on Eric Berry. So started with going to cover Eric Berry in Fairburn, Georgia, when he was a prospect, and incredibly blown away. Still Facebook friends with his parents, and still have their number. I don't call them often, but I just the thing that always will stand out to me about Eric Berry is that in the 2008 season, Caleb, things were bad. It was not only a coach getting fired, maybe like at a just normal old program, but it was Philip Fulmer, and going through that season. Other than Neyland, he was the most successful coach at Tennessee, and that was a team that was just absolutely falling apart because of a bad coaching hire and Dave Clawson, an offensive coordinator, and there really wasn't. Jonathan Crompton was set to be the starter. But quite frankly, I think there was a lot of disagreement. I know. There was a lot of disagreement in how to run the offense between Clawson and Fulmer. So it undermined the offense from the get. It doesn't matter. You had a hurdle at the starting line. So I don't care if it's Jonathan Crompton or John Elway. There were going to be struggles on the offense. And we've talked about how Dave Clawson flip-flopped the offensive line. And Dave Clawson was at a point in his career where he was not ready for that sort of job. So there was not a face of the program to come out. Who's the guy in football, Caleb, that comes out and visits with the media when things aren't going well, are going well? God forbid, a case of the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, when you have a player injured. Who is the guy in football that comes out and talks to the media most often?
I mean, typically it's the coach and the quarterback.
Right. That's the face of your program. Well, Jonathan, who I have a great affinity for, was going through an incredibly tough time not knowing if he had his head coach's back. And if you want to blame Jonathan for the 2008 season or portions of his career when he didn't play well, go for it. I think there were a lot of things going on you probably didn't know about. So you couldn't trot out Jonathan Crompton, who was also banged up that entire year, because he felt like he had to defend himself, much less defend the team's overall success. So the guy that got trotted out a lot of the times, and nowadays, Caleb, we see guys do maybe one interview or one media session every 3 weeks, right? Eric Berry came out 2 or 3 times a week, and I just absolutely just I had so much respect for him because he came out and you could tell he didn't want to do it. It was like going to get a root canal, but he showed up every single time. He answered questions. It got to the point when you're in early November that you really don't even know what to ask because you're asking the same thing because really the game has become inconsequential. This is when, Mike Hamilton came out with the comments that, Tennessee is not designed to go, I believe it's 5-6 or whatever the record was. And so it ended up in the firing and all of that. But Caleb, he never ducked interviews, ever. Not one time. Arian Foster would come out after making the media wait. I remember him specifically for 45 minutes just in hopes that they would give up. He would talk pterodactyl, and I'm just using him as an example. Eric Berry came out every time he was requested. There may have been one time where he needed some sort of medical issue, or he may have had a pulled hamstring or something. There may have been one time. So as far as character, I'm not knocking any of the other players I've covered, but he is A++++. Overcoming cancer, overcoming an Achilles tear, overcoming an ACL tear, and not only overcoming cancer, but the ability to keep your body in elite shape. And one day it's upper body, next day it's lower body, next day you're puking. I said this before, and I have a feeling that you might, history of Tennessee's program right up there with the best of them. I think there are 3 elite players, like change the game players. And Barry was able to go to the NFL and play 4 different positions: linebacker, strong safety, free safety, and cornerback. So I think there are 3 players that were transcendental players. I think Peyton Manning changed the game. I think Doug Atkins, because of his size-speed ratio and jumping over offensive linemen, changed the game. To me, those are the 3 elite. And then you take a little step down to your next grouping. But that's how much respect I have for Eric Berry. And I'm glad he's not being forgotten. I'm glad he was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame yesterday, because that's one of the finest young men. And sure, he could get surly at times. I mean, who couldn't when you're going through a losing season? And he hated losing. But Caleb, what are your thoughts on me having those 3 at kind of that elite upper level? You might have a disagreement there in 1 or 2.
So I never thought of Eric Berry as transcendental, but I think you're kind of right. In terms of like people, he's in my top 3 people to ever be at Tennessee. I'm with you on that. I'm thinking like, okay, so what about like somebody like, so Reggie White played defensive tackle at Tennessee and then defensive end in the NFL. Were defensive tackles really pass rushers like that before Reggie White? Did you have guys of that size?
The reason I wouldn't have Reggie White, God rest his soul, is that he did it for 1 year. He knew, he realized, that after his junior year, whoa, there's some money to be made. And whatever switch got flipped in that year, it got flipped for the rest of his career. So he never dogged it after that. But there was, as a junior, he was a big guy who didn't like to move around nearly as much. And he had a very productive senior year. So that's why I don't have him. Anybody you would throw out there, maybe even going back to the 50s, and you might come up.
The only other one I would throw out there is, believe it or not, and he didn't do it that long in college, but Jason Witten changed the tight end role in the NFL because Jason Witten is the only tight end. Usually you have a receiving tight end or a blocking tight end. Jason Witten's the only tight end I know that could play left tackle or play wide out. Like, he's the only one. He could have played either position. And usually you get like a Shannon Sharp or you get like a physical blocking tight end. But you don't. Jason Witten was literally a Hall of Fame mix of both. He could have been a Hall of Fame blocking tight end and a Hall of Fame receiving tight end. I don't know another receiver who could have done that. He's famous for outrunning the entire Michigan secondary in college. And so Jason Witten's not in like my top 10 Tennessee players of all time list. But in terms of transcendent talent, I think he might be there.
I could see that. And then you go way back in the day. There are certainly guys that I'm probably not nearly as well versed on. And I don't know if they showed up for media interviews or not. But I just go back about I just go back and man, he didn't want to be there.